Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to go over today's topic is DSOs 101 for sellers and associates. Over this next hour, we will discuss some of the benefits and downsides for both sellers and young associates. In this session, it's being recorded, so you'll be able to access it later. As this event is live, please submit questions during our discussion, and we'll pause throughout to answer some questions. My name is Doug Sellon. I will be your moderator today and a panelist along with Jason Wood and Adam Bratland. Just to tell you a little bit about your presenters today. So Jason Wood is a partner in the law firm of Wood and Delgado, a law firm focused on business transactions for dentists and doctors, leases, purchase agreements, partnership agreements, shareholder agreements, corporations, associate agreements, and other business-related legal needs he has been able to facilitate. He has authored many articles relative to the business side of dentistry, which has appeared in Dental Economics, CDA Journal, the New Dentist Dental Town magazine, Colorado Dental Association Journal, as well as numerous Dental Society newsletters. His CE podcasts pertaining to the business side of dentistry are some of the most viewed dental podcasts in the country. He is a moderator for Dental Town on all forums related for the business side of dentistry and enjoys helping and educating doctors throughout the United States. Prior to joining Wood and Delgado, Mr. Wood worked in Washington, D.C. for the Speaker of the House in connection with presidential and U.S. congressional campaigns, and thereafter he worked for the U.S. House of Representatives drafting legislation for various House committees. Adam Bratland is a practice broker up in the Pacific Northwest now, but Adam is a former multi-location practice co-owner of Chris Dental. Adam and his brother, Dr. Michael Bratland, purchased and managed a dozen clinics along the I-5 corridor in the Pacific Northwest. Adam served as the operation manager, dental recruiter, and director of clinical acquisitions. They sold their clinics in November of 2018 to the third largest DSO in the U.S. Adam's new role with Consani Associates is a natural fit. A little bit about me. I began my commercial banking career in 1987, and I have over 30 years of experience in the healthcare industry. I have assisted thousands of dentists, veterinarians, optometrists, and physicians with practice transitions, startups, commercial real estate, construction projects, and refinancing and consolidation. I've spoken at a number of local and state and national conferences, societies throughout the U.S. I presented to numerous alumni associations and national associations and sales service organizations. I feel like I provide a good amount of experience in management and business development from serving in numerous management positions. And I was one of the founding members of what is still today the largest healthcare lending institution in the United States, helping dentists. So that's a little bit about us. And so guys, you have anything to add to that? It's quite a mouthful.
No, I'm good.
Are you sure? I got to catch a breath. All right. So, well, let's just kick it off with some of our topics. And like I said, today it's going to be like a chat in which we're going to talk about various different topics. Told you about our panelists. So what is a DSO and why are we hearing so much about them? I can certainly take that one and then you guys can add into it if you like. But why are we hearing so much about them? Well, according to the definition of a DSO, dental support organizations or variations of what those acronyms, those letters say, they contract with dental practices to provide critical business management and support, including non-clinical operations. The creation of DSO have allowed dentists to maximize their practice with the support of professional office management. The DSO model enables dentists to focus on the patient while delivering excellent dental care. The DSO model emerged in the mid-90s to provide non-clinical support to dental offices to allow the doctor to focus on the patient. There are currently over 70 DSOs with private equity investors. Now, that's the definition and what you're hearing, but there's more behind the scenes, behind the curtain as to than just that. And why are we hearing so much about them right now? They're growing like crazy, and they are targeting people throughout the United States. Jason, you got anything to add to that?
No, it's just that it sounded like your definition came right from like the association of DSOs. Obviously it was in the best light possible. You're exactly right. DSOs were formed to bifurcate the clinical and the non-clinical. They were meant in an effort, really, I mean, depending upon how you want to analyze it, of either allowing non-dentists to somehow, and I'm going to use the word profit, even though we don't use the word profit anymore, but to profit from the practice of dentistry, because in the vast majority of states, almost all of them actually, a non-dentist cannot have an ownership interest in a dental practice. And so what the corporations and entities did is they saw what was happening in the medical field and other specialties, and basically took those forms of non-clinical management and applied it to the dental field to varying degrees of success. And actually in the 1990s, there was a really big push for DSOs, and unfortunately it collapsed. And through that process, the survivors really learned how to manage and operate practices even better, to the point where we are now in the 21st century, pretty heavily involved, depending upon which metrics you're hearing from, the ADA or the ADSO. I mean, you're talking between 20 and 35% of the marketplace. So it's an interesting thing, and if you don't know about them, you need to know about them.
Adam?
I think you guys have covered it really well.
Yeah.
And I think, at this point in time, most people in the dental field have a pretty good idea of what DSOs are and what they do, even though, we're here to provide more specifics. Yeah, I think you guys covered it great.
So, I mean, we could roll into the appetite or do the different types of models. I mean, the appetite, as I see it, is, first of all, I got a call yesterday from a dentist who says, I'd like to sell my practice to a DSO. I go, okay, so tell me a little about your practice. Well, the first two things that she said disqualified her: the size of her practice, the number of operatories, and the amount of production. And just would not interest anyone. 3 operatories doing $275,000. That's not quite their appetite. I mean, I appreciate that you're young and healthy and you want to put away the management side of things, but just focus on the dental side. But let's go through, and I'm doing this with another dentist right now who does fit, and that's what he wants. He's got 6 operatories. Okay, check. They're usually looking for 5 or more operatories, even more depending. Modern dentistry, they're looking for a modern facility of some sort, or at least, the capital investments not going to be overly high to bring it up to the 20th century. They're looking for revenues. And again, this is geographical. I'm in the Midwest. Jason and Adam are on the West Coast, but we've all done business across the country. They're usually at $700,000 or more in revenue, and some even higher than that. You're also looking at the age and health of the current practitioner and how long he or she wants to continue on. And that's just talking about the appetite. And then, all the different types of models that come into play. You guys could comment best on that as to what they might be looking at.
Okay, well, I would say in general, if you're talking about a model as far as the acquisition model, or are you talking about how the DSOs operate?
I think the acquisition model.
Yeah. And I'm sure Jason's going to add to this, but in general, what I see up here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm just generalizing here, is that a DSO will come in and want to put 75, say up to 75, maybe 80% of the agreed price cash at close. And then the remainder, 25%. And I've actually seen DSOs that come in with only wanting to put 50% cash down and carry the other 50% as withhold bonus. So yeah, generally speaking, you're going to see 75% cash at close. You're going to have a 25% withhold bonus. And those withhold bonuses, all of them come with production minimums. So it's not like you can just be there and be breathing and receive the rest of your money. You still have to work. You still have to maintain and or exceed your current levels of production. So basically, in a nutshell, 75% cash at close, 25% as a withhold bonus, and then a work back where the doctor works back, generally speaking, at 30% of their adjusted production. That work back will be, they like 5 years. We have negotiated lower than that, but it would be typically a 5-year work back.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking the models of acquisition, you've got three main models, and please understand that there's a lot of subtext to that, but you know, one of the main models is the DSO acquires 100% of your practice, and they typically will have a doctor of record who either for that state or that region will own the records, but they will come in 100% with, as Adam said, some type of carryback. And we'll get into it later, but I struggle with those sometimes because all of the risk is placed upon the seller rather than a sharing of risk in terms of the future revenues. Another model, which was probably most popularized by a company called MB2, is a partnership model where the DSO comes in and acquires a majority interest in your practice, and then you remain a partner in that practice. You receive profits associated with that. And then that model splits up into two different things. One, you participate in a recapitalization event if and when the DSO sells to private equity, or there's no recapitalization event, and you continue to be a partner with the ability to sell to another private practitioner, probably an associate in your firm. I'm sorry, in your practice. And then an emerging model that has taken place over the last 2 to 3 years is that the DSO acquires your practice, but then you get a stake in the parent company DSO. And it is typically, and this, please understand, this model has not been tested as much, but it has been moving forward in varying degrees of success. But you then are running with the DSO to a certain degree in terms of the success and the future recapitalization event to a bigger company. The real questions that come into the acquisition are, does it make sense for you? Notwithstanding the fact that you might get a great purchase price, does it make sense for you given your age, given how long you want to practice, given a bunch of multiple factors that you need to think about? So, and I think we're going to be jumping into that pretty soon.
Yeah. I can certainly pause and see if we have any questions at this time. Lauren, do you have any questions on the chat?
We do have one on the Q&A.
Yes. Do you see DSO gaining enough momentum to go in the direction of medicine and almost completely eliminate the solo practitioner in the market? If yes, what timeline do you see? If no, how much market share do you think they'll eat up over time, given Jason's current 20 to 35% estimate?
Well, this is something that I talk about a lot, and it's a great question, and it's one that is really predicated upon what this generation of dentists are willing to do. Because at the end of the day, it really comes down to the percentage of newer doctors that want to own. And there are some very sobering statistics out there where either through, and I hate to use the word ignorance, but I mean, it is an ignorance as to debt and business and things like that. But a lot of younger doctors don't understand that the quickest way out of debt is usually through the acquisition of a practice because of the additional cash flow that practice generates. So there's a very large inefficiency in this industry right now that, to be honest, the DSOs are preying upon. First and foremost, a sobering statistic is that female dentists are less than half as likely to want to own a dental practice than their male counterparts. And the problem with that is that the majority of dentists under the age of 40 are now female. And if that statistic, and I tell this to everybody, if that statistic does not change, yes, this industry is going to go the way of medicine. And what does that mean? That means that there will be a eventual suppression of wages. If you look at doctors make less, substantially less now than they did back in the 1980s, unless they're a plastic surgeon or some other unique specialty. They make substantially less than they did 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so that has to change, because the number one line item that Wall Street and DSOs see is the dentist compensation in a practice. And if I can knock that down, if I can even knock that down 3 to 5%, I have been able to provide additional profit for my shareholders, which is the main reason for Wall Street and corporations. It's not to make you, the dentist, have a cush lifestyle. It's how far can we press the grape to get as much juice out of it as possible. So it's a great question, and it should be on everybody's mind. And then individualizing it. What can I do to stop this as much as possible? And honestly, the quickest and best way to protect this industry is through ownership. So.
Yeah, I can jump ahead a bit on this. We're going to get to the associate later, and more about them and why the appeal would be to the DSO. But you're spot on with the demographics. With the over 50% of today's graduates are female throughout the country, and there's another percentage that are doctors from other countries who may not possess the proper credentials to own a practice, and that's increasing as well. So there's different states have different rules and regulations that become a barrier for some of those ownership situations also. So you are declining or decreasing the pool of potential owners. But the fastest way to get out of debt is to be your own boss. And we can go through some of that a little bit later. Lauren, do you have any additional questions? I'm sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Were you finished?
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, one thing that I'd like to add to that is that we've had a great economy, and there has been an explosion of DSOs. But, eventually this business model of buying all these clinics, having doctors work back, and hoping that you can sell this DSO within 4 to 5 years before all those doctors start retiring, and you've got associates in them. And I've seen it here where production tanks after that rock star seller leaves. And I wouldn't be surprised if our economy gets tough, things get really tough, and people can't afford as much dental care as they have over the last decade. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some pretty big failures with these DSOs who are trying to package these deals together and ultimately are unable to maybe sell them to VC or some other fund. And, that could be something that could reset this what we're seeing right now with this 25 to 30% this explosion of DSOs trying to eat up market share. So I don't want to say that that could be a bright spot, but it's definitely something that I see that could be a potential for kind of resetting things back a little bit as far as the DSO growth.
You're right. I mean, Jason commented earlier what happened in the 80s and 90s when they failed. Some was learning, but a lot had to do with the economy too. And as interest rates go up, eventually that may affect the appetite, the returns, and everything else. So, not that we're hoping for higher interest rates, but it'd be interesting to see what happens when those things do start changing. Lauren, any additional questions before we move into our next area?
No more questions.
Okay. So, Adam, here's a question for you. Should I sell to a DSO without representation? Now, we talked a little, there's representation. Obviously, you need an attorney at some point, someone as skilled and as accomplished as Jason. But aside from needing an attorney, who else might you need in representation? You can certainly do this by yourself, but why would you not ever want to do something like this by yourself?
Well, first of all, my biggest concern, say if you didn't want to use a broker, I get it. You can't do it yourself. But my biggest fear is that they would settle on quite a few terms before they would reach out to their attorney. And to the point where they've already really trapped themselves as far as being able to negotiate some of the main things, price. I would say absolutely, from the DSO deals that I've been involved with at Consani Associates, I feel like we've more than earned our income by negotiating a higher price. And we do that by we're a lot more aggressive with DSOs sales than we are with private individual dentists as far as being more aggressive with the buyer. And in a typical transition, we won't work buyers against each other. We're not real estate agents. We're not going to list something at $1 million and try and go back and forth between buyers and get 1.1 million. We don't do that with private individual dentists. On the other hand, with DSOs, we will always get 2 to 3 to 4 DSOs to look at a purchase. And when one DSO knows that another DSO is looking at it, and then possibly a third, they're going to be more aggressive. They're not going, they're going to throw, they're not going to try and be as conservative and start out with a lower bid and get eliminated right away. So we more than make up for the compensation that is paid to us, our commissions. And I think, the goal of these DSOs is to establish a personal relationship with that dentist and, essentially become the only buyer that dentist is considering. And, there's a lot of other things that need to be negotiated too, as far as work back. We've been able to negotiate work backs down to 2 years, and from 4 to 5 year down to 2 years, while maintaining a very high price for that practice. So, yeah, I mean, and then there's things like the lease. If the doctor owns the clinic and wants to lease or sell to the DSO, there's quite a few items that need to be negotiated in there as well. So, yeah, I mean, and plus, most dentists aren't going to know what comparable sales are to DSOs in their region. They might know one other person that sold to a DSO, but they're not going to know as many people, as many sellers as we have, and be able to really come up with a comparable analysis of what we can negotiate for them. So, and Jason, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Well, just for me, I mean, there's a reason why the DSOs are putting on marketing campaigns. There are reasons why, on Dental Town, you've got a bunch of DSOs saying, contact us if you don't want to manage your practice anymore. There's a reason why you're getting cold calls at your office from DSO, salespeople. And the reality is if they can get to you and you can get an LOI and you send them all their information and they come back with an LOI, your eyes typically, I mean, I'm saying as an industry, your eyes tend to get very big at the purchase price that you're seeing, because you've been told, the dental practices sell between 60 and 80% of collections, which, by the way, is not an appraisal mechanism. It's not a method in which we determine value. And so you're seeing this valuation that might be at 100% of collections or something like that. And little do you know that you're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've represented a seller to a DSO, and they come to me and they're all excited and happy, and they're excited because they got 4.25 times EBITDA or something like that. And I have to break it to them. I'm like, yeah, I just did a deal last week and it was way higher than this, and usually with the same company. So you need to understand from a selling standpoint that you're being sold. You are being, I don't want to say being played, but they're going to you directly to the consumer for a reason, and it's not an altruistic reason. So just keep that in the background of your mind, as you're probably going to get a lower purchase price when you are reaching out to the DSOs by yourself. I have one client who is a very, very big influencer, who is able to negotiate a pretty good deal. But again, it was because of who he was as an individual, not necessarily his practice being better than everybody else's. So.
Yeah, I mean, you both hit it right. That price is only one component. There's so many other factors, not only to a DSO, but also to just a regular purchaser. Allocation of assets, restrictive covenants not to compete. Do you own the practice real estate? Will you be leasing it? Will they be acquiring it? Rarely, very rarely do they buy real estate. But it's not that they want it. How badly do they want the location? And again, if you're in a rural setting, the likelihood of them coming out for you isn't as high as if you're in a more urban setting or a more city setting. Rural, whether it's a DSO purchaser or just a normal transition, it can be a bit tougher. We're going back for a second. We were talking about medical practices, and the individual medical practitioners still exist. They're not 100% gone, but where do you find them? You find them more in rural settings. Some have come out of the hospital settings or the group, and they do more of like a concierge type medicine. Would that be the future of dentistry in some areas, where some people sell out to a corporate group and then they write out their contract and then they reinvent themselves as maybe a boutique or of some sort of dental practice? Maybe. I mean, there's things does dental fall 10 years behind medical? Maybe a lot further. Maybe it's more like 20 years or 30 years. I don't think it's 10, because we've already be there if we were. I guess another question is, so say you decide to do this and it's great for you. Dollar amounts are great. You get the terms and conditions that you like, but what happens to your staff? What happens to your legacy? I think that's a couple of questions for you guys to talk about a little bit there.
Well, I think, Jason will probably provide, maybe more technical description of what happens. But as far as me being on the ground and what I see, generally speaking, when the DSO takes over, they want to keep the staff. They're paying a lot of money for that goodwill. They don't want disruption. They want the patients to be able to come in and see the same staff. And usually they try, unless you have somebody that's outrageously overpaid, they try and keep their compensation the same. Now, there will be other things to consider as far as what the other benefits look like as far as health insurance and retirement. But they want to keep the pay the same. They say they want to keep the staff. You know, but you do have a different boss now. And they are ultimately going to run it the way that they want it run. Yes, of course, they want you to stay and they want everything to look on as far as, you know, from the outside, the physical aspect of it, that everything's the same. But what I see that the hardest members to make the transition as far as your staff is usually the office manager, because everything that they've done and the clinic that they helped build, it's going to be different, and they're not so much going to be the office manager. I mean, they still keep that title, but it's very difficult for office managers, and I do see office managers leaving and taking other opportunities after a DSO acquisition. So that's all for me.
I'm gonna slightly disagree with Adam, only because he's right with respect to a lot of DSOs, but there are certain DSOs, and I guess I'll not name them, even though I love doing that, that they, because of their model, and remember, the risk is on you for these future revenues, they come in and they use that first year to basically purge high cost staff sometimes. And so, and hey, if it upends things, if it messes up the momentary you know, monthly production figures, you know, big deal. That's on the dentist. And I've had some deals. I had a deal down in Louisiana, Mississippi area, where it was a pretty darn big deal, about 28 million. And the seller had to carry a $6 million note. And this DSO came in and basically wiped out the staff and brought in cheaper staff. And so this doctor was having to work 80 to 90 hours a week, you know, burning the midnight oil to try to be able to maintain the production. And it was extremely rough. Now there are other DSOs where I don't want to change a thing. I don't want to touch anything. You're running the practice. It's doing great. We might come in and work on some efficiencies, or we may come in and work on supply issues that we see, or lab issues that we see, or software issues that we see, but they are very apprehensive of touching staff. So it's so important to understand the model that you're thinking that you're selling to before you get too far into it.
Doug, we have a question from Lance Jacob.
Okay. You want to go ahead and read it?
I think he's going to ask it.
Oh,
Lance, you'll have to unmute yourself.
well, until he does, we can just continue to roll along. Yeah, Adam and Jason, you're both correct in that, you know, I've seen both scenarios, and one thing you're talking about, the office manager, a lot of times that's a spouse, and you know, he or she's identity is part of that. Now, will they be retained in a different role? Will they be compensated, you know, fairly? Those are things to get, you know, with the LOI, not to try to get after the fact. If you know, some of the larger practices, they typically have a media person, a marketing person. That person most likely is going to be eliminated, or they're going to have to be folded into the new owner and see what he or she's been doing. Has it been effective? or not. So there potentially could be some modifications to the staff, the head count, the compensation, the benefits. Sometimes the benefits are better, sometimes they're not. So will the staff be retained or will they want to be retained? Some of my most popular purchasers are those individuals that have been acquired by a DSO recently where they were an associate. Now they're like, yeah, it's time to buy my own practice. Or maybe they saw that they were going to be the future owner of that practice and the corporate group swooped in and took their spot. So I assume Lance didn't come back or his question didn't get posted.
Yeah, I'd like to ask.
We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I'd
We're
like
good.
to ask Lance to type it into the chat or the Q&A, please.
All right. And so what are the typical timeframes on something like this? I mean, it can vary. The due diligence can be overwhelming, can go on for extensive periods of time. And then to ultimately say, we're not interested. Or it could be, we're very interested and it could come up, with an offer quite quickly. But then the time frame from that point on can still be quite extensive. Guys, anything to add to that?
I would say 6 months to a year. That's
Yeah.
It depends. I mean, I still try to get them done relatively quick, but I'm also coming in sometimes. I mean, sometimes I'm involved right at the front, but I would say from the time an LOI is signed, I'm trying to get it done within 60 to 90 days. But I'm also, that may also come into, okay, well, do we have a December 31st coming up? Do we have some other issues that we need to worry about where we're trying to negotiate that as a part of the LOI as well? So I'm doing a few deals right now where, the DSO was wanting to close first quarter 2022, and the seller CPA was really pushing for 2021, given some of the factors that may or may not be on the horizon. And so we were making that be a big part of, look, you want this deal, we need to close in the fourth quarter. So it just depends.
Yep. So if we have any questions, let's just continue on here. Lauren?
Yeah, we're good. We answered it.
Okay. So so we talked a little bit, again, about sellers and their appetite and the different types of models that could be there and proper representation, what that means. You should never try anything like this on your own. But let's talk a little bit more about the younger associates and the allure to a DSO, aside from the graduating demographics being what they are, which we already talked on. We can talk more about that as well, but why the appeal? Would you think there is for, one, they're obviously being scouted in dental school, being heavily campaigned and marketed. But aside from that, what's the appeal, Jason?
The appeal to the younger doctor?
Yeah.
Geez. Well, I mean, let's start with analyzing who the practice management professors are. And then lo and behold, you come to find out that if not a majority, a very large minority of them are associated with DSOs in some way, shape, or form, whether that's through direct or indirect contributions to the school or the background of the practice management professor. Forgive me for being a pessimist, but that's one of my most infuriating aspects of this whole corporate dentistry issue. So they are being told from a very early age about the crushing debt associated with dental school, and how are you ever going to be able to get out? And oh, private practice, working for private practice, you may have a great job, you may have a horrible job. And, the owner is going to want to take all of the procedures for themselves and only give you fillings. And, you're going to be on a per diem. And it's just a bunch of horror stories, rather than the reality of the situation is that, yeah, private practice, you may have some good jobs, you may have some bad jobs, but guess what? In the DSO world, you may have some good jobs, you may have some bad jobs as well. What I like to talk about, and what people think I'm anti-DSO all the time, but I don't. I want dentists to understand that this is a business. This isn't emotions, feel good, they're going to be my best friend or anything else. They are, at the end of the day, businessmen, businesswomen who want to get a profit. What does that mean for you, the dentist? Well, that means that if we're looking at a DSO job, the positives of a DSO job are you are going to be pretty full from a schedule standpoint. I love young doctors going to work for a DSO because you are going to be hammered with patients. What does that do for you? Well, that's going to help your hand speed. That's going to help your ability to produce at a higher level. Oh man, the first few months, they were having me do $1,500 a day and I was wiped out. Okay. Next 3 months, they had me doing $2,000 a day. I was wiped out. You're going to be growing to a point where in that first year, you're going to, and again, this is a broad comparison, but you're going to be able to be producing at a higher level than the private practice colleagues of yours, just based upon the amount of patients you're seeing per day. So that's great. That's huge. That's wonderful for you, because then when you've been able to show that you can produce, you can now take those monthly production reports and hand them over to a bank. And the bank is going to say, wow, you can produce $700,000 or $800,000 a year. You can qualify for a bigger loan because we trust that you're going to be able to produce on a monthly basis at a higher level. So those are all hugely positive things. They're going to be able to, or most DSOs are trying to teach you case acceptance, trying to teach you how to sell dentistry. Again, hugely beneficial for you as a young dentist. Now, what are some of the negatives? Well, most DSOs now understand that they can receive higher reimbursement rates for anything associated with specialty dental work. So that means that in the vast majority of DSOs or corporate dentistry clinics, they are going to be taking away from you anything that can be considered specialty dentistry and then handing it over to a specialist because they get higher reimbursements. So that means that the procedures that you do are going to be less inclusive. And so you're going to be working on certain procedures and not learning different procedures. So that could be a negative for you as you get to be an older doctor. You're also going to be working obviously more on just clinical. And so you're not going to be learning the business side of dentistry as well, which I strongly encourage anybody in the DSO world to be trying to understand. Well, why the heck is the office manager pushing me to do this or that? You need to understand those things. So overall, a young dentist working for a DSO, you're going to be able to make more money. The downsides are, and this is human nature, we tend to move up to whatever income level we're at. And that tends to then place us into a lower risk, which a lot of advisors will call it golden handcuffs. Well, now I'm making $175,000 a year. Can I really risk buying my own practice or doing a startup or something else? So now all of a sudden you are risk averse and now they've got you. And I mean, we can talk later about the income differentials when you're evaluating you being an associate versus you doing the same dollar figure amount as an owner. And it's like double income. And that's what people don't understand. That's what they don't get. And they're leaving millions of dollars on the table over a career, which, if my memory serves me correctly, would definitely help you get out of debt over a shorter period of time if you had multiple millions of dollars at your disposal. So that's it. I get paid by the word, so I like to talk a lot.
Well, I'll add to that, what you were saying, Jason, and what I see is, in regards to the golden handcuffs, is a lot of younger dentists do start a family, and they're working for a DSO, and naturally they want to buy a house.
Right.
They want to have cars. They will live up to their income, and that limits them, or it can limit them to when they want to go buy a practice. Well, one, the best practice may not be close to where they're living. And number two is that now you have another equation, which is when they look at getting a loan for a new practice, and that's the debt to income. And as you know, when you buy a house, you tend to also sink money into that house. So your liquidity may not be as good. So yeah, I have talked to dentists who, fantastic dentists, and I look at their background, and I'm like, why did you spend 8 years at a DSO? You're just so dynamic and you get it. Your production's great. And they, you know, but they'll say, I couldn't leave. They just treated me good and I made good money. And they're like, before you know it, like, and they're like, I was just astonished. I can't believe 8 years went by.
Right.
And I was working for that DSO. And so, yeah, I do see that. I agree with you 100% about getting that background as far as scope of treatment, and as far as flow, really pushing yourself to work faster and work better. But you have to be careful how long you've got to go in with a preset mindset of, okay, I'm going to be here 2 years. I'm going to be here 3 years. And then I need to leave and hold off on buying a house until you buy a clinic.
Another thing just to add to that is, when you are, and again, they serve a great purpose, new grad, it's going to be tough to get financing right out of school to start or buy a practice. Banks do have certain requirements. They have, Adam, you talk about liquidity. They do have requirements when it comes to some money in the bank, or access to money in the bank, just for when things don't go perfect. But if you do decide to go work as an associate or go work for a DSO, in your employment agreement, make sure you're having that reviewed as well before you just sign something, because you could be signing a restrictive agreement that's going to not only include the county which in you're practicing, but all adjoining counties as well. And next thing you know, you have a 60-mile non-compete, or it could be from every location that this group owns. They could have multiple locations, and if you are rotated through a couple of them, well, maybe your radius just went from here to here, and you got to go to another state to own your own practice. Those are just, they sound like, yeah, you come out of school. I have kids too. They come out of college, zero income. Now somebody's going to throw it in front of them. Hey, here's an employment opportunity, 125, 150,000, your eyes get big, you sign. Like, great, I got a job, I got debt. But before you sign anything, just make sure somebody's looking at it over. Because even in a DSO purchase, an associate agreement, there's always things that are negotiable. So what's your big plan down the road? We talked a little bit about debt. Just a fun fact, or this is what it is, but it's student loan debt is anywhere from 250,000 to 500,000, and we've seen 700,000 and 800,000 too. If you're a specialist, or if you just weren't quite sure what you wanted to do and you changed a few different times throughout, or you went to a private or a public, or you met the love of your life in dental school, now you got double the debt. And you want to buy a practice, and one of you want to stay home to help start this family, you might have a tougher time at things too. Love is blind, but it's broke too sometimes. So,
but that also means that you can qualify for higher practices, higher income, so on and so forth. So
Yep,
Don't drop down to one knee because you're afraid of taking on her debt or vice versa. So
exactly. I mean, we hit on it a little bit, but right now, financing banks, there are a lot of great national and local lenders out there that have conventional products that are extremely aggressive. Where interest rates in the 2, 3, and 4% for terms up to 15 years with 100% financing in most cases. And that means like if a purchase price is 700,000, they're going to give you 700,000 plus some operating capital or line of credit and other suite of banking products. So that should not be a barrier for you to own your own practice. Now is probably one of the best times you'll ever have to try to take advantage of that. Like I said, banks are extremely aggressive right now, and you could contact any one of us or any transition broker, and they can certainly connect you with some amazing lenders.
one of the things I wanted to talk about, I know we're kind of running up against our time, but for buyers, one of the questions is, well, I keep running up against DSOs when I'm trying to buy a practice as well. Look, I get it. It's a problem for some of my clients as well. But it should not stop you from looking, especially younger doctors. It shouldn't stop you from looking. But some of the key metrics that you need to be thinking about just real quick. One, do I produce at least 95% of the procedures that the seller does? Two, would I be able to add procedures? Three, what is the percent of hygiene? And please understand, I'm talking about GPs right now. What is the percentage of hygiene for the practice? Is it at or above 25%? You need to find in today's day and age, you need to find a practice that hits your baseline, but also because of who you are, you can then immediately add to that. Now, that may mean that a practice that wouldn't necessarily qualify because it's, say, 600 grand, but has 40% hygiene. Well, that means that there's probably a lot of untapped dentistry there. So that doesn't mean that you don't look at it. You may have to broaden your horizon to look at practices that DSOs may not be looking at. But I guarantee you there's a lot of older doctors out there that are basically just sitting, watching, waiting. And as a result, their hygiene departments are huge. And you, just by being who you are as a dentist, can take that 600 up to 800 like it's nobody's business. And then you're totally set. One, you've been able to add profitability to the practice overnight. So you're basically printing money. But two, you're also able to get into markets that aren't as competitive because the DSOs aren't really looking at those things. So another thing that I wanted to talk about was on the seller side, selling to DSOs. What are the multiples and things like that are out there? Doug, Adam, I don't know what you guys are seeing. I'm seeing a huge range though right now.
Well, I guess, and I hate to talk, I'm like you, I hate to talk about percentage of collections, but it just seems to be the most common factor, or the easiest description of what practice is itself for. So I have a clinic in Central Oregon that collects 1.2. And the 8 ops, no specialty work. It was remodeled 10 years ago. And I just received a DSO offer from a very large DSO for 1.4.
1 point what?
1.4.
Okay.
So it collects 1.2, received an offer for 1.4. So basically what I'm seeing in Oregon in the hot spots, which is along I-5 and Central Oregon, DSOs are starting at 100% of collections, whereas the real marketability of that clinic is probably closer to 85% of collections. And so, their intention with these DSOs is to blindside a seller by throwing out this high number right away, because they know that dentist, that seller, is not going to be able to get that number out of the head. But what, also is an education process on my part when I'm talking to sellers is I have to line out and show them what they're really going to be making over the term of 4 years if they sell to a DSO versus selling to a private individual, and all the money that they're leaving on the table. So, I mean, I can probably make a pretty good justification why 80%, of collection selling to a private dentist is about the same as selling 100% to a DSO. Or that you would even, come out better at that 80% selling private.
Right.
I
And
have
that's,
I have
go
a
ahead, Doug.
comment. We don't see huge numbers from DSOs. This is a broker. We're in New Jersey and also Pennsylvania, and have had smaller DSOs and groups come along, but no one has thrown any large dollars at any deal. This is an educational challenge for us.
Okay. I don't, like, I do DSO deals in Jersey and Pennsylvania. Actually, I'm involved in one in Pennsylvania right now. So it's this developing market that has, to a large extent, has come out of left field in the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, the DSOs have always been there, but I mean, it's almost like it's a feeding frenzy now for a lot of sellers, because they've heard through the grapevine or heard their buddy or whatever about these. It's almost like the fountain of youth or the lost city of gold or something, that it spreads like wildfire, that this is how you sell your practice now. And so we're, the DSOs are out there, and they're definitely giving good money. Doug, I don't know what you're seeing. I'm seeing a low of about 4. Oftentimes when sellers are doing it on their own, to as high as 7. And understand that if there's any specialists here, the specialists, completely different algorithms when analyzing the practice from an EBITDA standpoint. We're seeing even more aggressive nature from specialty DSOs than we are with, I'll just say, broad spectrum DSOs. I mean, to the point where I'm scratching my head on some of them, but this is what you need to understand as a seller. It's not the purchase price, and Adam hit it right on the head. It's not the purchase price. It's the time after you close. How long do you have to stay working? Because guess what? You're now staying working at a lower rate than you otherwise would have been able to receive. So if I'm required to work 5 years in connection with getting this larger purchase price, because there's a pediatric DSO that does this, and they offer like 9 times EBITDA or something like that, and then they want you to work as a specialist for much lower than what a specialist would get, and then it's a 5-year commitment. So you have to analyze the entire economics associated with the deal rather than what's in your face in that LOI. So you need to figure out the metrics and then apply it over the entirety of your relationship with the DSO, because guess what? Sometimes it actually makes sense to stay for another year and then turn around and sell it to a private practice owner instead. Especially around the 1 million to 1.5 million revenue, where the buyer may want you to stay on for a period of time. You're typically going to get more from a private practice buyer than you are from a DSO buyer if you stay on in a support capacity. So all of these have to be taken into account. So please be talking to people, and don't get inundated and just giddy over what you see in front of your face, because as your CPAs will tell you, as your advisors will tell you, it's not the gross that you receive, it's the net that you end up receiving that's more important. So.
Yep.
Well, Doug, did we talk before we go? And I know we're really pressed for time, but did we want to spend a couple minutes on, obviously we've made a pretty good argument of why dentists really need to consider a DSO versus a private practice sale. But what, we talked about this earlier a little bit. Why should somebody really strongly consider a DSO sale? Because obviously I do them, Jason does them, and there are situations where, it's in my opinion, the minority of, I would say less than say 25% of the DSO sales I've done, really, I felt like the doctor benefited. I hate to say that, but that's
exactly.
So, but yeah, there was a situation in Portland, for example, where this dentist was going bankrupt. He built this big, beautiful office that was in Architecture Digest, and he had a divorce. There were just a lot of things. He was 40 years old. He did not want to leave that practice. It was his baby. He was financially devastated. The DSO put together really went above and beyond to pay off a bunch of his personal debt, back alimony. And in my opinion, that dentist, that served him best. And he was, to say the least, a horrible businessman, but he's very happy. I talked to him and he's like, I get it. I'm not going to make as much money, but I am a horrible businessman, horrible with my personal finances, and I am happier now. And plus I don't have to manage. So that one in particular, that was okay.
Yeah. Well, I think we all can agree there's pros and cons to both associate working for one or working for a private practice, or a seller selling to one or selling to a private individual. It's all making sure you're fully educated, properly represented, because there's so many different variables that play into it. Price isn't just the end thing, it's the allocation, it's the work back. If your health is good and you got time, it might be a good option for you, or stay in the seat, keep producing it you're producing, and maybe even expand, maybe bring on an associate, grow it a little bit more. There's a lot of different options. It's just making sure that you think through them all very thoroughly and talk them over with someone like us, or someone who has experience in doing these type of things, before you just say yes.
I also think that, and this is one of the first questions I ask my clients that are contemplating selling to a DSO, because I have a crazy amount of 38-year-olds to 42-year-olds wanting to sell because they're tired of the management. And I always ask, well, how long do you want to continue practicing dentistry? Well, I love it. I want to continue practicing for as long as I can. Or, at least on 55 or 60 or whatever. You need to understand what you're giving up by not wanting to manage. And by the way, little secret, you're still going to be managing because you have to manage the clinical employees. So do you hate management? Do you hate owning a business so much that you're willing to sacrifice? Again, I'm talking to the 38 to 42s to 45-year-olds. Are you willing to sacrifice multiple millions of dollars over your career to be done with the management? And guess what? Sometimes the answer is yes, but you need to think about it from that perspective. If you love dentistry still and you want to continue practicing 10, 15, 20 years, you have to ask yourself that. If you hate dentistry and you're 38 to 42 and you just want to be done because it's like you're in prison, then absolutely a DSO is the right avenue for you. If you hate management so much, you can't stand the employees, you can't stand the risk and all these other things, then guess what? DSO is probably a good sale for you as well. But don't be looking at that number and seeing how much you're going to be making. You have to extrapolate over your career. Again, they're not altruistic. They are doing this for a reason, and it's millions of dollars. So just understand that there's definitely a clientele, there's definitely a box for you, the seller, but you got to ask these tough questions of yourself, your spouse. You should be talking to your spouse about this, all that stuff. All right, I'm done.
All right. Well, thank everyone for sitting through this with us today. This was recorded. It will be on our ADS website, and I'm sure the three of us will be sharing it throughout other medias as well. If you have questions for us, please reach out to us. And we again thank you for your time today.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.